Hey guys, I asked you for questions yesterday and I got a whole bunch. So, I have my coffee ready. Let's get going. There's no right answer. Some like wide, some like telephoto, some like bringing a zoom. If you want faces from a distance, telephoto. A normal view, then a normal lens, like 50 millimeters on full frame. Interested in architecture and all the lines that you can capture, then ultra wide might be the way to go. Yes, there are a few EXIF viewers that will show you shutter counts. For the PC, there is one called OPanda EXIF. For the Mac, I use one that is simply called EXIF Viewer. Shutters can fail. Most don't, as people tend to replace their cameras every few years now. But if you shoot into the hundreds of thousands of images and end up needing a new shutter, it's not the end of the world. It seems like digital tech moves so fast that before a shutter fails, most people have already upgraded. Personally, I would just go for it. It could last hundreds of thousands of clicks. Or it might not. A shutter replacement wouldn't be the end of the world. A cheaper body might tend to fail more quickly than a D70-100, costing you money regardless. It could, but you'd also be reducing the exposure of the night shot, meaning that you'd have the shutter open longer, so any glare and flare would be equally prominent. Also, adding the filter itself could contribute to glare, depending on the quality of the filter and the lighting circumstances. Thanks! It's never a bad idea to go for a little quicker shutter speed than you think you need, regardless of circumstance, assuming that, you're not going for some special motion effect. If you have enough latitude with ISO and a good fast lens that will open the aperture enough to support a faster shutter speed for the D7000 when shooting telephoto, go for it. This is something to do at telephoto range, whether it's an FX lens or a DX lens. If it's what you need to do to get the shot that you want, go for it. Personally, I don't do it very often. I actually have a little ultra wide for my V1 that is allowing me to get a lot into a single shot. Which lens to use is up to you. I talked about that in the very first question. This all comes down to your personal style. I don't have any problems with nerves in public places, but I don't get into people's faces either, and I don't like it when people get into mine. They do make some good ones, but I'm pretty bad about moving stuff through my lab quickly, and Tokina and other third-party lenses are not near the top of my list. It really depends on the lighting and how far you'll be from the stage. If the lighting's very dim, you'll want to use a wide aperture like f1.8 or f1.4. If you're going to be a bit farther away, an 85mm prime might be great, but closer up, maybe a 50mm. If you're not really sure and you want to be ready for everything, the big gun, 70-200 f2.8, is a top choice. Aperture priority does work well for landscapes, and I use it a lot. I can shoot at f1.8 all day, then switch over to f2.8 when I want to isolate a leaf on a tree or a caterpillar. However, if there are people moving around, or if you're shooting birds in flight or something like that, I'd go over to shutter priority and assure that I'm freezing motion with some decent shutter speeds, like 1/500th or faster. One advantage is more flexibility when post-processing. One disadvantage is really needing to process every shot to share it online or have it printed. Some people will say that the additional storage requirement of shooting RAW is a disadvantage, but I say if we're going to spend the big money on cameras, we'd better be prepared to pony up for storage. I think you'll do great. The temptation is to shoot constantly, and I don't see that as a problem. Take the plunge and see what happens. Hey Joey! In the US at least, if someone is in public, they have no expectation of privacy, and you can take pictures of anyone for non-commercial use. This is also true in your studio or other location if they agree for you to take their picture. Honestly, I don't know about Canada though, and one rule trumps any laws out there. Err on the side of openness and collaboration. It can lead to great things. So, if you aren't sure if you can take someone's picture, if you aren't sure if you can add it to your portfolio, ask them if it's okay. They'll probably say yes. I'm pretty candid about my opinions of my photos to my clients. I also know that I've given 100%, captured the event or portrait, and worked within the confines of the venue and the overall circumstances. If there is a technical problem, like if I missed focus on a key shot, I will work with them to make it right. If I captured the event and worked to my ability, I can unapologetically say that I did my best. A photographer or a ballet dancer. Great question. I talk about it here. I don't have one. People seem to like them though. They just seem a little bit awkward to me. The camera, the little case. I see myself with something like it, but maybe something a little more elegant than the current incarnations. Canvas printing. It's not my thing, but if you like the look, go for it. It doesn't matter what I think. In fact, the shots you sent to me look fantastic. There's two schools of thought on this. You can find a niche, but nobody may care. Or you can mimic the success of others and either be crowded with competition or share in the riches. To me, any niche can be successful with the right social element. The internet creates a fascinating opportunity to find a niche and take it global overnight. Suggestions for a niche? I'm not sure, but maybe folks will leave some ideas in the comments. That's a pretty cool test. Different lenses really distinguish themselves in extremes. Maybe low light or in situations that require fast handling, constant refocusing, and repeated zoom actions. A less expensive lens might fall apart while a more expensive lens might keep on trucking. That would be scary and neat, but mostly scary. I can't speak for anyone else, but definitely not for me. Only this, to photograph the grandchildren. You need to be one of the grandchildren. Get on the floor with them. Depending on their ages, hand them the camera. Have fun, be at their level, catch the real moments. They will cherish the images for a lifetime. I've only tinkered with large format. Feel free to ask your question here in the comments and maybe one of my viewers knows the answer. Mark, you answered your own question. Energy and passion. The technicals are important, but people will hire you because they know and trust that you will bring your best. This is more social than anything. That's a good question, Heiko. I think it's time to bring in some fresh talent. For FX, I'd have a 50mm at a minimum. If you're traveling to a land of great architecture and scenics, 24mm and wider would be on my must-bring list too. You want to be close to the subject with a wide-angle lens. The kit lens that you have with the D5200 likely goes to 18mm, which is a great place to start. If you are far away from the subject, you will get more background, but they will be small. If you zoom, you will get a narrow angle of view, so you won't have much background. The only thing from a practical perspective is to be close and shoot wide. The 18-200 is a great all-around. I also like the combo of the 18-55 kit lens and the 55-200 telephoto zoom. It sure is nice to have the 18-200 as a do-it-all lens, though. Personally, I would embrace the environment. If it's gray and stark, shoot the bare trees or maybe a spooky old barn. I agree though, vibrant is fun, but I'm not a big fan of making a photo something that wasn't really there. Your cloudy, gray, and cold photos won't look like Prescott, but you have something around you that Prescott can't often deliver either. I find that the Nikon TTL system tends to overexpose, at least for the way that I shoot. I always dial in 2/3 a stop of negative flash compensation. As for commander mode, I never use it. I use manual settings for each strobe and speed light. This way I am assured of the same lighting from shot to shot and only get changes when I physically change the power output of the individual lights. Do it as much as possible. Work with people that you already have a strong relationship with at first. That'll help. IKEA. I love IKEA, and I am fortunate to have one nearby. RAW plus JPEG is a good way to get started if you're not sure how much processing you'll be doing. The downside is that it will use a lot of storage, so make sure you'll have enough memory card capacity with you. You can always shoot RAW and create the JPEGs at a later time too, but if you'll be doing Facebook sharing or even some printing while in Jamaica, it's a good idea to have JPEGs handy, especially if you won't have a computer with you. And when I think of Jamaica, I think of bright colors and water. A polarizer might be a good filter to experiment with, especially around the ocean. It will let you do things that you need in the source image, not things that you can do in post-processing. There are pros and cons to each, and everyone has an opinion. Some people will tell you exactly which mode to use. Not me. Learn the pros and cons and make your personal decisions. This is a tough question for me because I don't think of people as photogenic or not. I think of them as people. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but we're all unique, and I don't like to hide that. Rather, I like to celebrate diversity and differences. When people bring a great attitude to a shoot and I keep it upbeat as the photographer, great things seem to happen regardless of perceived weaknesses. I believe a strong background in art, any visual art, is excellent for photography. I have an art history degree, which has helped me to develop my preferences for my own work and style. I always encourage people to develop their vision by their preferred learning method. For some that is classroom, for others that is alone in the forest. Once you have that vision, learning the camera and tools becomes secondary. Oh, I don't like that button. It seems to blind everyone around. It will technically show you visually what your lighting looks like before taking the shot, but the reality is that it kills your battery and you can simply take the shot and look at your LCD rather than creating the evil strobe effect of the flash preview. I have not used the S2, but I have rarely met a camera that I didn't like. I have a soft spot for open source. Here's a link to my review of Darktable. Digital SLRs have virtually made the depth of field preview button obsolete. It will stop down the lens while you're looking through the viewfinder so you can see what will be in sharp focus when you take the shot. Anymore, most people take the shot and check the LCD to see if their aperture is helping to create the desired effect. All the time. I can usually tell in the first few minutes of discussion if I will click with the client and if they'll click with me. If it isn't going to work, I'm quick to offer referrals to a photographer that may be a better fit for their desired style. I buy cheap filters on eBay and take them off the lens when they would cause problems. I bought a high-end multi-coated polarizer used on eBay for $11 because it had a chip in the filter ring. The glass was unharmed, so I went for it. I don't have any brand advice. For me, cheap is fine for what I do, and I often work without any lens filters of any kind. Hey David, you can check out my article on this. You can find it in the index of my site. I like having optical backups as a safety net, but I'm also a huge believer in redundant live storage on hard drives. In fact, I'm upgrading my storage setup and I'll be showing it off in a couple of weeks. You could end up spending a lot of money doing this, so I went for an option that gives me a lot of storage at a surprisingly low price. No freebies on this one though. I spent my own money, so bang for the buck was critical. You need lenses that open to wide apertures. A current generation DSLR that can cleanly go to very high ISO settings doesn't hurt either. I'm a big believer in lens before ISO though. Fast primes don't have to be expensive. If you do need the flexibility of a telephoto zoom in low light, the 70-200 has become industry standard. People complain about kit lenses like the 18-55 all the time. But it's actually very sharp at good apertures for landscapes like f8, and it's lightweight. I go to faraway places and take long hikes to get my landscape shots. Lighter can really be better. Okay, back button focus. Normally when you half press or just press the shutter all the way down, the camera will focus. On many DSLRs though, you can take the focus off of the shutter button and only focus on demand. I have set my camera up like this on occasion, and if it works for you, that's great. I found it to be a bit cumbersome. The great advantage is that you lock focus by doing nothing and only refocus when you specifically tell the camera to do so. For someone who is shooting in a way where they are locking focus a lot, it can be a very good way to shoot. Scary for sure. I focus on the process and have talked through the shoot with the client many times beforehand. I've attended the rehearsal and know as much about the bride, groom, and parents as to how the wedding will go. There are jitters for sure, but there's a point where you just have to trust your preparation, have backup gear on standby, and jump in. This is like my question on grandchildren. You have to be one of the puppies. Do puppy things and take photos while doing it. Just get it over with? I've actually talked about this quite a bit in my videos, so I'm not sure what I'd be getting over with. I use interval timer quite a bit, or another model, or an assistant. I haven't heard any rumors like this. I'd be delighted to have a Nikon One System CX sensor version of the V1, but I doubt that will happen. If it did, I'd be first in line. It really depends what you're shooting, and if you go to your favorite search engine and type depth of field calculator, you will get a good idea of reasonable apertures for different situations. Also, do a little bit of research on diffraction. Digital sensors are prone to this, and you can lose sharpness as you go to very narrow apertures. Abandoned buildings? That's cool and hardcore. Suggestions from me though? I think I should be asking you for suggestions. Congratulations on finding one of your passions and getting out there and doing it. Definitely on my list for this year. Once I heard that you can develop Tri-X with coffee, I realized that I can combine two of my loves, so that's coming. Gem. At the same distance with the two different cameras, everything will be the same except for the crop of the image. Once you start changing the distance to compensate for the crop, you're changing the depth of field. By how much? Online depth of field calculators are good for that. If you are close to the subject, the change will be more prominent. Acceptable depth of field on a DX body for a portrait may be too shallow in the same circumstances when you are shooting the same lens with FX closer up. Also, especially with portraits, if you get too close, you can introduce perspective distortion to the face, which will exaggerate facial features. Even small changes in distance when you're already close up can change the perspective quite a bit. People sometimes think that this is the fault of the lens or the sensor that is used. No, it's all about the distance to the subject. Yes, I do. A lot of you are better at non-mainstream than me, especially when I do something that's really, really different from the norm. I become a bit shy and insecure about posting it. Yes, I have. I have made these reflectors that I put on my SB800s. I use these all the time when I'm going to blow out my white backdrop. And this is not really photography related, but I made this little duct tape purse for my Nintendo 3DS. I use aperture on the Mac most often. I'm not getting any younger, so I have been known to use a bit of the dynamic skin smoothing feature in the Nik Color Effects Pro filter set. The healing brush is something that I leaned on sometimes when I used Photoshop, but other than that, I prefer a more natural look with my models, and we talk about this beforehand. This sometimes means that I'm not the right photographer for the work at hand. All right, guys, I'm to the end of my list of questions, which is good because I am out of coffee. Thanks for the questions, guys.